perfect light.
Almost 40 years ago, Dr. Helen Schuckman, a conservative research psychologist at the Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center in New York City, heard what she believed was the voice of Jesus. The voice said, "This is a course in miracles." What you are about to see is an extraordinary story of how that one sentence began the decade-long dictation of a book that would change thousands of lives and lead to the creation of scores of nonprofit organizations around the world. Helen was ambivalent about the religious nature of the words that came to her in a process she described as inner dictation. Whether or not you believe that it was actually the Spirit of Jesus, one thing is certain: the Course contains a powerful message of forgiveness. From the moment Helen confided her secret to her colleague Bill Thetford, everyone connected with the Course has been steadfast in their commitment that it be used as a teaching device and not the basis for another religion. Today on the Visionaries, you'll meet some of the first people Helen and Bill trusted with their extraordinary document and learn how it would change their lives forever.
When A Course in Miracles was given to me, I was at a critical point in my life. A few days before, I actually had an emotional breakdown. I realized everything in my life was really fine. I was lucky. I was blessed with a marvelous family, 2 healthy growing children, a beautiful place to live, a wonderful career, and I felt empty. Just absolutely empty, desolate. As I was weeping, I heard myself say, "Won't someone up there please help me?" And I said it a few times. "Won't someone up there please help me?" It was only a few days later I met Dr. Helen Schuckman and Bill Thetford. They worked together at Columbia with a tremendous amount of tension and hostility around them. Their own relationship reflected this. There was a lot of sniping, backbiting, there was heavy-duty criticism and judgment, and it wasn't very pleasant. One day, after a particularly difficult meeting, Bill turned to Helen, and he did something very unusual. Bill gave an impassioned speech in which he said that they just couldn't seem to be at peace with each other. And he finally ended it up and he said, "There must be another way. There must be another way." And he really meant it. And to his surprise, instead of ridiculing him, Helen put out her hand and she said very sweetly, "I don't know what the other way is, Bill, but I'm determined to help you find it." And that to me was the critical juncture of 2 human beings who came together to find another way of being in the world.
It was almost as if Helen had waited her whole life for that moment. She had really written God off and written Jesus off. At the point when all this happened, she would have dreams that were very, very pregnant with meaning. The figure of Jesus began to appear. It was very disconcerting to her. And the culmination of all this was an October evening.
Helen was sitting at home, and she heard very clearly, "This is A Course in Miracles. Please take notes." She called Bill, and he said, "Well, why don't you get out one of your notebooks and take down what it says?" And she said, "Well, what if it says something irrational or crazy?" He said, "Bring it in the morning, we'll lock the door and pull down the shade, and you read it aloud to me, and I'll type it up, and if it looks crazy, we'll throw it away." And that first night, what she took down in peace and in quiet was the introduction to A Course in Miracles. This is A Course in Miracles. It is a required course. Only the Course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. The opposite of love is fear. This Course can therefore be summed up very simply in this way: nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God.
Something struck me that was not only beautifully written, but it had a very, very powerful message. And I felt a real connection with it. I very quickly changed all my plans. This was my life's work.
I knew it was true for me, and I knew that this was the help that I needed. It spoke to me. After the text was finished, Helen began to scribe the workbook for students, which has a lesson a day for 365 days in order to practice the principles in the text of A Course in Miracles. And after that, very quickly, was dictated the manual for teachers, not for a teacher outside to teach someone else, but rather to turn to the inner teacher.
It would be a big mistake if people use the Course as a way of building another church, a cult, a community of followers, etc. Its purpose is to be a self-study course where people develop a relationship with Jesus or the Holy Spirit and work with them on healing their relationships.
Many of the terms in the Course are Christian, so-called Christian terms, but what the Course does is give a whole new understanding and a different interpretation, you might say, to the terms, so that the Holy Spirit in the Course would really be the presence in our right mind of the memory of God and who we truly are as a part of God. And it's not the same way that like Christians would talk about the Holy Spirit. So it's not something outside of me. It's something within my mind. And so the Course makes you aware of that it's your choice whether you want to go to your right mind and hear the Holy Spirit and ask for help and guidance, or if you want to stay in your wrong mind and listen to the ego.
The thrust of the Course is the healing of relationships through forgiveness. The Course would emphasize that we would be much happier and more peaceful if we could let go of our grievances. And rather than harbor grudges against each other, that we would seek to find what unites us rather than what divides us. And what unites us is that we all basically share the same anxieties, the same fears, the same guilt, the same concerns, and that we all share the same interest of being free from them.
We made the commitment that we would publish A Course in Miracles through our not-for-profit organization called the Foundation for Inner Peace. We felt very keenly that there should be no central organization, that there should be the availability of the books to come to people as they felt they needed it. There are about 1.5 million copies of A Course in Miracles in print, and that would include 8 language translations. There are many paths one can take. Helen didn't choose to use A Course in Miracles, and that was her choice. And I'm very glad A Course in Miracles was named A Course in Miracles and not The Course in Miracles, because it indicates, as the Course itself says, that there are many, many, many different roads, and they all lead to the same place, which is home.
Shine my life like a light.
Since its publication by the Foundation for Inner Peace, its president, Judith Skutch Whitson, has traveled over 1 million miles introducing people to A Course in Miracles. Both Helen Schuckman and William Thetford died in the 1980s. However, the work they were instrumental in bringing forth continues to live through Kenneth and Gloria Wapnick at the Foundation for A Course in Miracles. The couple was inspired to create a quiet and peaceful place where serious students of the Course could come to study its teachings in a meditative setting, at which people from all walks of life have learned to apply the principles of the Course in all their relationships.
The principles of the Course make no sense if you don't live them. Without that application, then the Course means absolutely nothing. The purpose both Gloria and I have shared here at the Foundation has been to really have students come away from a class, a workshop here, a seminar, with a deeper understanding of what the Course is saying, so that they can best study it on their own. We don't want them to use this as a substitute for their own learning, but they would come away with a deeper appreciation of this incredible thought system and the relevance it would have to their personal lives. Right at the beginning, that this Course does not aim at teaching you the meaning of love, because that cannot be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the obstacle or the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. And those barriers are our decisions to choose guilt and separation instead of forgiveness. In the Course, forgiveness means that I recognize that whatever it is I'm attacking in you and criticizing you for and condemning you for is simply a projection of what I'm secretly condemning myself for. Therefore, in changing my mind under the guidance of the Holy Spirit about you, I'm really in effect changing my mind about myself.
I came to the Course really hoping that the people who were giving me a hard time in my life would change. It took a long time for me to realize that the Course is about changing my mind, not asking somebody else to change.
The thrust of the Course, again, is to really heal our relationships here. Now, the real healing occurs in our mind, but the effect of that would be that we would live lives in this world where we are more peaceful, more loving, kinder, less anxious, less phobic, less depressed, less judgmental, less.
You really get to see that your relationships are the places where you can heal. My children know very little about the Course. They just know what it's done for me. So my daughter about 2 years ago asked me, what is the Course all about? So I sent her a book, Ken's book, a little talk I'd given on the Course in Miracles, and she went, "Ma, give me a break." Jesus is talking to somebody and she's writing it down. So therefore the form wasn't of interest, but each one of them knows that the content has changed for me. My life has changed for me, that I'm more peaceful, more contented, more willing. And therefore, in essence, their life with me has changed. I finally learned that the thought behind everything is really where the peace is. That's the one thing that gave me solace when I found out that I had cancer, is I didn't feel like a victim. You do have strong reactions to chemo. You get very sick, and you get very, very tired. But I never feel as if this is something being done to me. I never feel like I'm suffering.
The Course says God did not create this world because it's the opposite of heaven. All right? There's no materiality in heaven. There's only spirit. There's no bodies. There's oneness, not multiplicity. You begin to understand that we're starting from a whole different point of view here. And that's why the Course says, my interests are not separate from yours. Because ultimately, we are all one, not as you and me, but the oneness of heaven.
The only real way there could be peace in the world on any level, whether you're talking about individual within families or social groups as well as nations and religious, etc., is for people really to learn one by one that there is another way of looking at people. There's emphasis in the Course on looking at what we could call the dark side of our psyche. And I think that the wonderful ideals of ending suffering in the world and ending wars and conflict, these will never be realized as long as people don't pay attention to this darkness that's in all of us. It's our relationships with each other which bring these to the surface. There's a part of each of us that doesn't want to help others and doesn't want to let go of our particular turf, our individual experience and our individual this or individual that. And what the Course helps us realize is that it's in our best interest to uncover these cornerstones of hatred and guilt through forgiveness. That's what makes the Course so unique as a spirituality. And I think so directly relevant to our age. Because nothing has worked. And it's obvious to anyone who looks at human history or recent history. And it's not because people don't want it to work, it's that they're not aware of this other side to them, of this ego side.
The whole basis that this Course stands on and what it teaches is a perfect way for people to really change their minds. And as each person changes their minds, it will affect the whole, because we're all interconnected.
The students and myself are really on the same journey.
That's what allows me to truly become an instrument of God's peace.
We're all on the same path together.
I choose the peace within me, and then the extension of that peace through me just happens. And I open up my mouth, and whatever it is I say will no longer have any judgments. What would your life be like? It would be the same as it is now, except you'd be happy all the time. And you'd be peaceful. You wouldn't be moody, you wouldn't be angry, you wouldn't be depressed, you wouldn't be anxious. You know, you'd be damn boring.
If you teach, you will learn. The more that I teach it, the more my own understanding will deepen. It was a major life change. But also looking back on it, it was something that was so natural. It was just like taking the next step. Like you're taking a walk, you just take the next step. You don't think about it. You just do it. And it just seems so natural and so right.
We were always in those kind of professions. I was a teacher and he was a psychologist, so we were always helping in a sense. And this was a different mode of helping.
I think it was a way of understanding that we were not the helpers, that we were not the teachers or the therapists, that there was another presence that was teaching through us.
Kenneth and Gloria have moved their foundation to Southern California, where they continue to offer workshops and classes on site and on the internet. In the end, A Course in Miracles can be described very simply as a spiritual teaching which helps people change the mind from conflict to peace, from fear to love. Interestingly enough, the origin of the Course itself, two people changing their minds about their relationship and sharing a common goal, exemplifies this teaching. The Course guides its students to make the same choice they made.
Shine my life like a light.